You know what's wild to me? A pitcher puts up a 3.77 ERA in 15 starts, does everything the organization asks of him, and instead of being rewarded with a rotation spot, he's being dangled in trade rumors. That's the Eric Lauer situation in Toronto right now, and the more you dig into it, the messier it gets. Let's just set the table here. Eric Lauer is 30 years old, he's heading into the final year of his contract. This is his last shot to prove he belongs in a big league rotation before hitting free agency. Everything is on the line for this guy, and last year, when he was actually given the ball and told to go start games, he posted a 3.77 ERA across 15 starts. That's not a fringe number, that's a guy who can pitch. But somewhere along the way, the Blue Jays decided they'd rather have him coming out of the bullpen as a swingman, and Lauer is not having it. According to a report from The Athletic's Mitch Bannon, this disagreement between Lauer and the organization has gotten serious enough that a trade is now a real possibility. And I want you to think about that for a second. This isn't a guy demanding a massive contract extension or causing problems in the clubhouse. He's asking to start baseball games, which is the job he's been doing his entire professional career and the job he performed well at last season. The fact that this has escalated to the point of trade talks tells you everything about how different these two sides see the situation. Now here's where Toronto's front office is coming from, and I'll give them some credit because their logic isn't completely crazy. Last season, the Blue Jays cycled through 15 starting pitchers. 15. That's not a rotation, that's a revolving door. So when they look at Eric Lauer, they don't just see a starter, they see insurance. They see the guy who can bridge the gap when Kevin Gausman gets nicked up, or when Jose Barrios hits a rough patch, or when Shane Bieber, who's already dealing with an injury after exercising his option to stay in Toronto, misses time. A competent swingman who can eat innings and slot into a start on short notice is genuinely valuable. The Blue Jays know this because they lived through a season where not having that depth almost killed them. And on paper, Toronto's rotation looks loaded. You've got Gausman, Barrios, Cease, who they just signed, Cody Ponce, Trey Yesavage, and they're apparently even kicking the tires on Max Scherzer. If all of those guys are healthy and pitching well, where does Lauer fit? That's the front office's argument. They don't have a guaranteed spot to give him, and they need someone who's willing to be flexible. But here's the thing, and this is where I completely side with Lauer. What the Blue Jays are calling flexibility, Lauer is calling career sabotage. And he said as much. He told Keegan Matheson at MLB.com, and I'm paraphrasing here, that the bouncing back and forth between the bullpen and the rotation last year hurt him in the long run. He wasn't being dramatic. He was describing the reality of what happens to a starting pitcher when you yank him out of his routine, disrupt his preparation schedule, and ask him to function in a completely different role. Starters and relievers train differently. They prepare differently. They mentally approach games differently. Asking a starter to flip back and forth isn't just an inconvenience, it can genuinely mess with your mechanics, your arm, your consistency. And then it gets even more personal. Lauer went to arbitration this offseason. He filed for $5,750,000. The Blue Jays countered at $4.4 million, and Lauer lost. The case went in Toronto's favor. Now listen to what Lauer said about that. He told Bannon that the fact that he ended last year in the bullpen was probably what cost him his arbitration case. Think about what he's saying. Being placed in the bullpen didn't just hurt him on the mound. It hurt him financially. It affected how his year was evaluated, which directly impacted how much money he made. So when Lauer pushes back against this swingman role, he's not being difficult. He's protecting himself, his career, and his livelihood going into free agency. John Schneider, the Blue Jays manager, has been diplomatic about all of this. He says they're preparing Lauer as a starter, but then he used a word that I think is very telling. He called Lauer an option, not a starter, not a locked-in rotation piece. An option. He said having that flexibility is really, really beneficial. And yeah, it's beneficial for Toronto. But Lauer's not playing for Toronto's benefit right now. He's playing for a contract. This is the fundamental tension that nobody in that organization wants to say out loud. The Blue Jays want a versatile arm they can deploy however the season demands. Lauer wants to be a starting pitcher so he can get paid like a starting pitcher in November. Those two goals are not compatible. And when two sides want fundamentally different things, something has to give. The trade angle makes sense when you look at it through that lens. If Toronto can't guarantee him starts and Lauer won't accept a bullpen role, then keeping him around creates friction that nobody needs in a season where the Blue Jays are already dealing with injuries and roster questions. Meanwhile, there are teams out there that need rotation help and would love to get their hands on a guy who just posted a sub-4 ERA in 15 starts. The market for Lauer isn't nothing. He has real value. What I'll be watching is whether Toronto actually pulls the trigger or whether this just becomes one of those situations that quietly resolves itself. Maybe Bieber's injury opens a rotation spot. Maybe one of their other starters struggles out of the gate and Lauer slides in naturally. Maybe they bring in Scherzer and decide they've got enough starting depth to trade Lauer without hurting themselves. There are a lot of ways this unfolds. But I keep coming back to the bigger picture here. This is a player who did his job, posted solid numbers when given the opportunity, and is now being squeezed out of the role he earned because the team values their own flexibility over his career development. And in his walk year, no less. There's something uncomfortable about that, and I don't think Lauer is wrong for fighting back. Whether he's still a Blue Jay by opening day, that's genuinely up in the air right now.